Okay, so now we're in a digital age where technology, 3D animation, and things like that are in the norm, and AI is encroaching so fast we have no idea where that's going to take us. I thought it would be good to look back and say how was and is in some cases, not in America so much, but the rest of the world still does 2D animation, traditional hand drawn animation. How do you do that? How was it done? So I'm going to do a quick demo here, but first I want to talk about the tools of the trade. So this is a light box. You're looking at a light box meaning that I can switch on a light and you can see through drawings. So when you're doing in-betweening, that we'll explain in a minute, you're able to see all the drawings on different layers of paper. But basically that's the light box. That's the important thing to have, because everything is going to be done by pencil and paper. A peg bar is really important. The peg bar is a registration device where you put your drawings on it and they're always going to be registered in the same position each time. And that means that when you use animation paper like this, it's always going to have peg holes like these that allow them to be put into or onto the peg bar. Okay, so animation paper, we can get different sizes. You can get sizes that pretty much a letter, like a letter sized piece of paper, and you can buy those, and that's much smaller than this. This is what we call a 12 field sheet of paper, meaning it's 12 inches from left to right, more or less, and you can work at that size for pretty much most things. And then in the old days, for more exorbitant productions, you can go to 16 field, which is this big, and it allows you to draw bigger, which means when it's projected up onto a big screen or 4K, the detail is still pretty strong. But I'm using 12 field paper to do this demo, and you're going to need lots of these sheets of paper. Now, where do you get all these things? Well, it's hard to find animation supply stores that do traditional things anymore, but I can say that in the USA you can use a company called Lightfoot, which is online. Go to lightfoot, I think .com, and you'll find all things like pre-punch paper, peg bars, light boxes, and pretty much everything that you'll need. They are still selling those things, and even they go beyond that to other things that you can find out when you go to the website. If you're in Europe, I know for sure Chromacolor is another animation supply company. You might want to look them up. Beyond those two regions of the world, however, you'll have to search in your own country to see where you can get these things. But certainly here in the USA, as I'm recording this, Lightfoot is the best company to go to. All right, and the peg bars, by the way, this is the cheapest version, which is plastic. It's fine unless you throw it around or do bad things to it, but it's going to be fine for your whole life, I'm sure. And it's a few dollars. It's not very expensive to get a plastic peg bar, which you would, in my case, it's embedded into the light box here, so it's all of one level. But if you've got a separate light box, and I do recommend LED tablets, by the way. You can get a simple LED tablet, which is about this size, and it's very cheap and perfectly usable. And you can put it on your lap. You can put it in any place you want to work, and they're really good. And you get larger size ones too, of course, if you want a larger one. But you get your peg bar and you'll tape it to the edge of your LED pad if you're using one of those light boxes, or as I say, you might go more advanced and get an embedded one like this, which probably only Lightfoot will supply anymore. And you can get paper similarly that way. You can also get metal peg bars, which do have a longer life. Plastic, if you bend it, it tends to snap and everything, but the metal ones, but once they're taped down, you're not actually going to be doing anything with them. Okay, so what do we do when we're animating in traditional 2D? Well, the first thing I recommend is that you create what we call a field guide. A field guide shows you the area that the camera is going to see of your animation in the final analysis. Now, transferring your drawings to film or video is a very subjective way of going. Some people prefer, like here, you're watching this through my overhead camera that's looking down on my animation light box. That can be connected to an animation program that captures single frames and then renders them out as videos. And that's pretty good, I would say, for testing. When you're doing pencil animation in the early stages, not color, not inking, but in the first stages, you can test everything using a camera overhead, and you can use a webcam in a fixed position. It has to be in a fixed position, and it has to be with your drawings on a peg bar. Okay, so that there's registration, everything's solid, nothing's moving around. But that's one way of getting your animation out, but it's only really good up to the pencil drawing testing stage. The other option, which is a much better option, is to have a scanner, and your scanner also has to have a peg bar taped to the side so that you scan each drawing individually on the pegs one by one, and then import those drawings into a similar single frame program that can also handle inking and coloring. And some of these can be quite expensive, but I recommend Rough Animator. Rough Animator is an amazing program. You can work on a tablet or a phone, anything with a drawing pen attached. You can work directly into the software without needing pencil and paper. It's a drawn process. It costs about $6, and it works on phones and tablets and desktops. So it's an amazing program. But if you've got it on your desktop and you're scanning your drawings, you basically import frame by frame your drawings into Rough Animator. You can play it back and see it as a pencil animation test. Then in Rough Animator, you can create another layer. You can ink your drawings with a fine line or a thick line, whatever you want. And then when you've done that layer of tracings or inkings, then you can digitally color those. And it's a matter of just touching the inside of an area and it will flood the color in. And then you can render it, and you can add a background behind it, piece of artwork behind it, and you can render it out as a final piece of film. So that's an amazing piece of software. But anyway, what we're focusing on here is the traditional pencil and paper on here. Capture processes, you can experiment with your own. So the first thing you want is a field guide, as I say, and this is a 16:9 field guide, meaning it's 16 units across and 9 down. And I usually mark the center so I know more or less where the center of the screen is. But this is, I try to make it as big as I can onto a sheet of animation paper, and then this will be my reference to work all my drawings to when I'm animating. Okay, so it's called a field guide. This is HD 16:9 ratio. Okay, so just how do we animate in 2D? Well, we've got our peg bar, we've got our field guide, we've got our light box. So the first thing I'm going to do is create key drawings, because what you want to do is you block out your key drawings. You put your drawings where they need to be before you do in-betweens or before you think to get into detailed drawing. You've got to get all your keys in the right positions, and keys are very important. If your keys are not good, your animation is never going to be good. So it's important to get keys in the right position to get the right drawings that you want for your key positions. And basically a key position is points in an action that are a beginning and an end, or something in between that changes direction, and you would create a key position for any one of those things. All right, but for today's demo, I'm just going to do a very simple thing. So this is my first key position. It's a ball, and what we're going to do is have a ball jump from here to here and back again, here to here and back again. So I'm going to show you the process of doing that. I've already drawn this to save time. You notice I've added a little bit of shadow underneath, and I've hinted at a shadow here on the assumption the light source is directly above. And this is our number one position. I've numbered it here. Normally we put numbers up here out of the shot, out of the film area, but I've found that in the digital age, when you're capturing these and you want to look at your playback on video and you want to decide if a drawing's working or not, if you add need to add drawings, take drawings away, it's good to see the number on the screen. So I put number 1, this is our first drawing, and I put a circle around it because every key drawing needs a circle around it. It indicates it's an important drawing. Okay, so we've got our first drawing. So now what I'm going to do, get another sheet of paper, and we want our ball, remember, to jump over here. So what I'm going to do is very lightly put a line in here, delineating where it's contacting the ground. And because we've got a light box, and because I don't want to change the dimensions of the character or anything, or the ball, I'm just going to trace this one, because basically when they hit the ground, or at least when they start and end, they're going to be in a perfect ball shape. Things will change or deform, as we say in this day and age. They change shape and deform because of impacts and because of gravity and various other things that may affect the shape of our characters, or our, in this case, ball. But what I'm doing is I'm basically tracing it from beginning to end, so we have something to work with. Okay, now I don't know how many frames it's going to take me to go from one side to the other. It's going to be quite quick, so I would suggest, what I'm going to do is do a chart, but at the moment I'm not going to number this, and I'm not going to do a chart because I want to work out as I go along what it's going to be. But bottom line is, this ball is going from there to there. It's going to bounce or roll. We could do, I tell you what we'll do, we'll have the ball rolling to there, and then it's going to jump back, roll to there, jump back. It's going to be on a cycle. So in that case, let's just make it fast because this is a quick demo. Let's make this, I tend to work on even numbers, so I'm going to make a chart. I'm going to put a chart on number 1, and I'm going to make even in-betweens, meaning each one of these in-between positions are another drawing, and they're going to be even because the distance between them is even. So that I'm going to number them 3, 5, 7, and this one's going to be 9, which is this one. So now I know it's going to be 9. I can number it number 9 just here. Okay, so basically this is our in-betweening approach to this scene. Okay, or at least the first part of this scene. So I like to put the higher number on the back, and I like to put the lower one on the front. Okay, simple as that. Now, so here's our chart, and we've decided that we're going to put 3 drawings in between 1 and 9. So the first thing I do, with the light box on, I get another sheet of paper, put it on the pegs, and before I do anything else, and let me show you, halfway between 1 and 9 is drawing number 5, so we need to number this 5, and I'm putting it in parentheses because this is called a breakdown drawing. Okay, a breakdown drawing is the midpoint between 2 key drawings. It's the first one you put in when you're doing in between. So we've numbered it number 5, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to lightly draw a line from the bottom of one ball to the other. I'm going to put a mark where it's actually touching that line on both cases, and then I'm going to say, okay, that's 1, that's 9, 5 is going to be halfway. I'm doing it by eyeball, but if you want to measure it yourself with a ruler or something, you can do that. But I think over the years I got the experience of judging it, eyeballing it, as we say. And then what I'm going to do, because the ball's not changing shape at this stage, I'm going to line up that mark with the bottom of the ball. I'm going to make sure my paper is parallel, and then I'm just going to trace it very quickly and very lightly. I'm going to trace it. And I'm going to trace the shadow because nothing's happening with this ball. It's just rolling at this stage. It should be on an incline, but we're not doing that just for the demo. We're just going to have it having a mind of its own, just rolling from one to the other. So I'm going to put that back on the pegs. Now you can see I have the ball pretty much equally. The gaps here and gaps here are pretty close. I'm going to turn the light out just to darken it up a bit. because if you're drawing light sometimes and you're capturing it later, the light drawings don't capture very well. So always darken it. Darkening it also helps when you're in betweening. So there we are. Now don't worry about other drawings, construction drawings, lines, whatever, showing, because remember we're working at a pencil stage. We're roughing out our animation, and we're going to work on our animation until it's right, and then when it's right we can do the inking and coloring, which takes it to the next level. But this demo is all about just pencil animation at this stage. So there are different ways of checking your work. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing, but I'm flipping it with 5 on top, which is we go to 1, and I'm using these 2 fingers and these thumb and finger to do that. So I'm basically showing 1, 5, 9. 1, 5, 9. I hope you can see it on the camera. But that's showing it's moving from one side to the other. Now another way of testing it by flipping or rolling, depends what you want to call it. I call it flipping. So we can put them in order. So it's 1, 5, 9. So we can just do it like that, and you can see it moving that way as well. Okay, so basically it's a test. This is very simple. It's very mechanical and simple geometry. It's going to be working okay. But when you're doing characters, twisting, turning and everything, it really helps to flip your drawings as you go along. Okay, so now we've got our breakdown drawing number 5 in between our keys 1 and 9. We need to put the in-betweens in, and the in-betweens are going to be 3 and 7. 3 is between 1 and 5, 7 is between 5 and 9. So we're going to take all the drawings off the pegs. I'm even going to take the field guide away, because once you've got your key positions locked into your field guide, the in-betweens are always going to be within the area, so you don't need another layer cluttering up your light box. And I'm going to take drawing number 9 away, and I'm just going to put 1 and 5 on the pegs. I'm going to get a new sheet of paper. I'm going to call it number 3. Okay, no circle, no parenthesis around it, because it's just a regular in-between. I'm going to lightly trace the ground line between the two, and I'm going to dissect the gap between the balls by half, and that gives me my ground line position for the halfway number 3 position. And I'm going to line up my number 3 with all those things with the ground line, making sure my paper is parallel at the edges. And I'm just going to roughly trace the number 3 position, just to give me an idea of where it is or what its shape is, very lightly. And then I'm going to take it off the pegs, put it back on the pegs, turn the light box off, and darken it up. And it really is useful to darken up, because when you're capturing your animation afterwards, you want to make sure, if the drawings are too light, they may not show up on your camera or your scanner. So it's good to darken them up, so to be sure they get captured. And also it'll help you when they're stronger, more strongly drawn. They'll help you when you're in betweening. Now we're doing a ball, which is really easy, but if you're doing more complex stuff, you want to see all of your drawings. Now if I put my light box on, you can see number 3 is midway between 1 and 5. If I turn it off and put them in order on the pegs, we can flip them in order, and you can see that there it goes, it's moving from one side to the other. Okay, all right, so now we're going to do 5 between 5 and 9. We're going to do number 7. So I'm going to take those drawings off the pegs. I'm just going to keep number 5. Bear with me, have to juggle paper around. I'm going to put 9 back on, and then new sheet of paper, number it 7. And again, I'm going to draw a line dissecting the 2 balls. I'm going to draw a line, the path of action. And again, I'm just going to line this up, make sure the paper's level and parallel at the bottom. I'm going to line this up with the center of that one. Lightly trace the ball from number 5. As they're all tracings of tracings, they should all be the same shape. It won't be true if you're doing any other kind of animation, but at least for this demo, I'm showing you the simplest way with the simplest shape. Okay, so now we've got 7 drawn. You can see here in the middle. I'm going to put it on the pegs. I'm going to put it 7 over 9, 5 over 7, and then the other 2 I'm going to put 3 and 1 over the top of that. So they're all in order. And I'm just going to flip them for you, and you can see the whole action. So there. Hopefully you can see that through the camera. But there's our ball rolling. Okay, so now we've got it from 1 to 9, 1 to 9. Now what I want to do is have it jump back to 1 again. So that's a separate demo. We're going to go into that right now. But I just wanted to show you the most simple of simple in-betweening exercises dealing with keys, breakdowns, and in-betweens. Okay, that's the basis of all traditional hand-drawn animation. Beyond that, we get a little bit more sophisticated, and I'm going to do that in the next part of the demo. Okay, so we got 1 to 9 in a very simple, straightforward way. Now let's just go a little bit deeper into animation. 1 to 9 was just straight in-betweening, breakdown position, 2 in-betweens, okay? Coming back, it's going to be different because we're going to have a little bit more action. Now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to block the ball in at the very top of the bounce. So in fact, for this, I should put the field guide because we want to make sure it doesn't jump out the top of the frame. So there's the top of the frame with our field guide here. So I want the ball to jump up to about halfway there. So it's still within the frame. And to keep the consistent size and everything, I'm just going to very lightly, as before, trace the shape of the ball and the shadow. This time the shadow is not going to be under the ball, it's going to be on the ground, so I'm just going to put, it's roughly there, so I'm going to put that there. So here's our new drawing back on the pegs. I'm just going to darken it up a bit so that we can see it more clearly when it's captured and when we're in betweening it. But essentially we've got a triangle of key positions. We've got 1, 9, and this new one, which is coming from 9 up in the air and going to land back at 1. All right, so we can call this a key, but I don't want to number it for a minute because I want to show you one more thing. Okay, so let's go. I'm going to take the field guide off. Let's go put this new drawing on the ground. I'm going to put 9 because that's really where we're going from at this stage. I'm going to put 1 to one side for the moment. We're going to have the ball going from there to there, but if we just had it moving straight to there, it wouldn't have a sense that it's really pushing up and jumping. So we're going to use a thing called anticipation, and what anticipation is we're going to put a squash on the ball in the opposite direction. So I'm trying to keep the volume pretty accurate here on the ball, but if you see what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to have the ball go backwards first before it goes up. It's called an anticipation. I'm angling it slightly this way, and I'm going to have it hugging the ground along here a bit, but essentially the volume's the same. And I'm going to keep that shadow on, but the shadow will be bigger now because the area the ball is covering is bigger now. So I'm going to make that shadow bigger. but that's more or less going to be halfway. So if I darken this down, and this is a new key, of course, because it's a change in direction. There's a shadow there. So it's going to go down first, and then it's going to go up to there. All right, so I'm just going to darken that a little bit more. Okay, you can see what's going on. So what we're going to say is number 9 is going to go down to that squash. Now I want it to wind up a little bit. I want it to go down and hold and then go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a chart for number 9, and this is a new key here, remember. This one is a new key. And I'm going to do 2 in-betweens, and I'm going to do them like this. So 11 would be halfway, 13 would be the next in-between, and 15 would be this key position. So we can number it 15. And that means we can begin to think of the number for that one. So when I go from 15 to that one, it's winding up, and then I want it to go pretty fast. And the thing with gravity is when we go up, gravity pulls on us and it slows us down. And then when we come down again, which it will do, it's going to accelerate. It's going to get faster and faster. So if I put the light on, you'll see that it's coming from here up to there, and then it's going to end up down there where 1 is. So what I want, and the more drawings you put in, the slower an action's going to go. So if we do a chart from here to there, and we make it like this, so we're going to go from 15 to 17 to 19 to 21. See how I've pushed them all up there? So 15, 17 is the breakdown position, 19 is the next in between, 21 is the next in between. So that means that this drawing is 23. Okay? And then we're going to reverse that. So when you've got in-betweens getting closer to towards the end of an action, that means it's going to slow down. We're going to do the opposite here, because we're going to go down to 1. So we want 23 back to 1 to make... actually, I'm not going to make it 1 because there's going to be a little squash at the end. I'll show you that in a minute. But we're actually going to do our in-betweens like that. I'm not going to number them for now, but I'll get back to that in a minute. Okay, so now we have our 9, 15, 23, and then we go back to 1. So that's again all our key positions. All right, so I want to show you the last bit before I do breakdowns and in-betweens. So I'm going to take 23, and it's going to go back to 1. But a bit like when it comes down onto 1, it's a bit like an anticipation at the beginning. Remember, we squashed it and then it came up. Well, when it comes down, it's going to squash and then become 1. So we're going to put one more key in there, which is like this. It's going to be a bit like the anticipation, but on the other way. So it's going to squash down a bit like that, and then become the 1 again. So I'm just trying to make sure I'm keeping volumes pretty consistent. And then our shadow is going to be a lot bigger again. And I'm going to put the shading around there. Okay, so now we have that position. Now we can start thinking what this number is. So we're going to come down from this one and hit this one before we go to 1. So this will be 25, 27, 29 will be the halfway position. Remember, because we're putting more in-betweens at the top this time and coming down to this number. So this is not going to be number 1. This is going to be 31, okay? Because we worked out 29 is the breakdown, 31. So this one is 31. And then I'm going to do a little chart where it bounces up 31, back to 1 again. So 33, 35 will be the breakdown, and 1. And that gives us a complete cycle of it rolls to 9, and then 9 squashes, anticipates, jumps up, lands, squashes, and straightens up and becomes 1 again. And that's going to be our cycle of working this. So, okay, let's look at in-betweens and breakdown positions. Okay, so just to see what we're dealing with here, I don't know if you can see that. I'm trying to shade off outside light, but we're going from 9 down to 15, then up to here, then down to there, and then reverting back to number 1. I think you can probably just about see that. So, and these numbering comes from experience. So I can't expect, if you're a raw beginner, I can't expect you to know what to do here. But my advice is always just try something and see what happens, because it's really by doing it and seeing what happens and making mistakes that you become better. And that's where you get your experience from. So just jump in and do your best shot. But just know you need in-betweens in all these things. So from 9 to 15, we're going to do number 11 now. And there's number 11, and that will be our breakdown drawing. So new sheet of paper, 11, put it in parentheses because it's a breakdown drawing. And then all I'm doing is I'm trying to eyeball, as we say, halfway. So just do it lightly to start with the light box on, and kind of guess where the shadow line's going to be. And then once you've got it lightly drawn, you know it's pretty accurate halfway everywhere around, you can just darken it up. And that gives us our breakdown between 9 and 15. Okay? So there we go. And if I flip it, you can see it squashing. See how it's squashing? And then we just need one more in between in a minute. But I'm just going to do breakdowns to start off with. So now I'm going to go from 15 to 23. So let's grab 23. And this is where it gets a little bit, where knowledge comes through more than just doing a mechanical in-between. So what we're going to do is from 15, we're going to go, from 15 here, we're going to go 17 to 23. So I put 15 and 23 on the pegs. I'm going to number it 17, parenthesis, because it's a breakdown. Now I want to show you something. Because the ball, if we did a straight line, it wouldn't be convincing. When something bounces, it goes on an arc and it comes down on an arc. So what I'm going to do is imagine where the center position there is, center, and somewhere around here number 1 is. So I'm going to very lightly sketch an arc or curved path of action. And what I'm going to say is, this is going to jump up halfway because 17 is halfway. I'm going to guess about there. And what I'm going to do is tell you that let me turn the light off for a minute. When we've got a squash going up, if this ball was bouncing directly from the ground here, straight up to a round shape there at the top, because when anything gets to the top of a bounce and slows down like a ball, it will revert back to a perfect ball, and then when it comes down, it'll speed up and it will do a thing called squash and stretch. The squash on the ground is this shape, but the stretch is when it goes up, it's going to go distort or deform in a slightly different way, and I'm going to suggest it's something like that. And there's your center position. So this is stretch. Famous squash and stretch of animation. All right, and that's what we're going to try and do. We want a shape like that going up to the final position there. So what I'm going to do is show you a cheat. Basically, this is our path of action. This is the center of it. So I'm just going to pretty much put it in the middle of that elong shape. I'm just going to even it out a little bit, making it a bit more symmetrical, but essentially that's what I want it to do. So here we have our ball, squash, stretch, and reverting back. And when we do those in-betweens, we're going to revert it back to the round shape. So I'm just going to darken this up, just even it out a little bit. And remember, just always try to keep the volumes consistent from drawing to drawing when you're doing all these distortions or deformations. I'm just going to indicate halfway position there, and then let's just throw the shadow in because it's going to be around there somewhere for the lower half, and we're going to throw in the shadow under there. Okay, so like that. So we've got there, there, there. Okay, so now we've got to go down the other side. So I'm just going to leave this drawing in for now, but I need to get my drawing. So number 1 is going to be here, and we're going to do the same thing going down. So we're going to go from number 33 down to, actually we're going to go down to our squash position, which is 31, but I'm using 1 as my target for a minute, and I'll explain that. So on the way down, we're going to be doing from 23, it's going to be 29 before we hit the squash position. So I'm going to put number 29 as our breakdown. And the reason I kept this one on is that I wanted to keep this arc consistent. And there's the center of the top position, there's the center of 1. So somewhere our center of the downward position is going to be there. Okay, and again, when it comes, we remember we did a squash here, stretch, revert back, accelerating down, squash here. This is also a stretch position. So all I'm going to do is basically trace this again. It just saves us time. All right, so I'm very quickly going to lightly trace that. And you can see there's a stretch going on there, okay? And again, our shadow is going to be underneath it, somewhere like that. And again, the under shadow is going to be around there somewhere. So if I turn the light off and darken it up, we'll have our 29. Actually, I should have put that in parentheses because that's a breakdown drawing. We should have our 29 position like that, our undershadow like that, and there we go. We'll take this one off now. You see that coming down from the top, we're going to go down like that. Now we're not going to hit number 1 because we're going to hit that squash position. So let me put those in order and you'll see how this all works out. So 23, 29, 31 to 1. It's like this, 23, 29. See how it's coming down, squashing and then reverting back. Okay, so that gives us, this one is our final breakdown position, except we do need to put a breakdown position in between 31 and 1, which is a bit like the anticipation one. So it's number 35. And I'm just going to lightly draw it in. It's somewhere in between all those lines. So let's just work it round, keep it pretty aesthetic. And I'm going to do the shadow halfway, and I can do the other shadow. So this is our last breakdown position. So you can see how we build up a scene, and these stages are important. Keys and breakdowns are really important before we do the in-betweens, because if you jump straight into the in-betweens and you get it wrong, then you've wasted a lot of drawings, a lot of time. So there's our squash back position to number 1. See that? So it's come down, squash, bouncing back up. All right, so we have all our keys and our breakdowns. And in an ideal world, I'd recommend that you test all these as what we call a post test. You don't put the in-betweens in, but you hold the drawings longer to fill up the spaces that the in-betweens would be in. But here's our ball coming down Let me just try and show you that. Here's our ball coming down and squashing and going up. See how it reverts back. And this just gives you an idea of all the different stages of how we rough out animation. And there we go. I'm looking for, sorry, drawing 17. That's what I was looking for. It evaded me. And there's 15. So now you can see from the squash goes up. You can do a little bit of squash and stretch going on. So squash, stretch, and you can see the little jump. I hope you can see on the screen the little jump going on there. See that? Okay. And then we just need to add our drawings 9, 11 to that, and we have our complete jump back sequence. So 9, squash down, stretch. 9, squash down, stretch. See how that's working? Okay, came off the pegs. Often does that. Alright, so that gives us all our keys and breakdowns for the jump back. And so now all we've got to do is the in-betweens. Okay, so in-betweens, we're going to just got one here because we've done 11. So we're going to do 13 between 11 and 15. So there's the action you can see with the light box on. So I'm going to take drawing 9 away because we don't need that anymore. And I've just got 11 and 15. So I'm going to put number 13 in there. And very lightly sketch in a halfway position between those two shapes. Just needs to be light for now. And the shadow is going to be halfway between the two as well. Alright, so there's our 13. I'll just darken it up. Now in a real professional world, I'm doing a very simple demo for you here. There would be more going on here. For instance, this anticipation, it might do a little roll and squash and jump, but I want to keep it really simple for you guys. And when it lands, at the moment I'm going to have it squash and revert back to the ball. Well, probably in a more advanced piece of animation, it would squash, jump up and land and become the ball. So boom, boom, like that. But I want to keep this simple for you just while we're learning. So there's my in-between, you see. So nothing remarkable, it's just halfway. Okay, so there's that one. 11, 13, 15, put them to one side. So now we're going to go 15, 17 to 23. Now this is where it gets more interesting. So we don't need 15 because we're going to go 17 to 23 with 19 in the middle. So I'm going to put 17 and 23 down. New sheet of paper. And it's going to be 19, halfway between 17 and 23. So 19. Now this is where it gets interesting. So here's our arc. All right. I'm copying it. Remember, it doesn't matter about using construction lines or anything. There's the center of our number 23. And there's the center of our number 17. So 19 is going to be halfway there. So there's 17. There's the center of 19. So this is where it gets interesting. What I'm going to do is put center on center. This is where the center of that one is. I'm going to put center on center. This is called superimposition. Okay. And then I'm going to put this new center we created over the top of those. And I'm going to try to keep the arc as close as I can. As long as those centers are over there and the arcs and the paper is kind of halfway twisted, see how it's halfway twisted, and then I'm just going to lightly draw in between both drawings. So the ball is reverting or deforming back to the original ball shape. See that? And I've roughed it in very lightly because it's hard to see and you want to clean it up in a minute. So I've roughed it in there, and we can see that if I just try to smooth out the edges. Remember, it's a ball. It's always, even if it's squashing or stretching, it's never going to have corners. So you have to try and get a nice curve going on everything. Okay, like that. And I'm going to put the shadow underneath, which is the bottom half. So it'll be about there, like that. And I'm going to put the shadow on the ground, which is halfway, which is somewhere like that. Okay. And there we have the ball slowly deforming back to the shape of the circular one. And then we've got 19. Okay, we're going to do odd numbers, remember. I always do odd numbers. 19 to 21. 19 to 23, it's going to be 21. So our next in between, put the light on for you. Our next in between is going to be 21. I'm going to again trace the arc, and this time I can see the centers from there to there, so it's going to be there. All right, that's where our center is. And again, I'm going to superimpose. So what I'm doing is I'm taking this center and putting it over that center like that. Get as close as you can. And I'm going to put that center over that one, and again roughly try to match the arc. And this time it's better because you've got a nice clear arc to match. And then I can see that the ball is somewhere between these two. And I'm drawing lightly, you don't want to go too heavy. Somewhere between these two. And there you can see it's in the middle, and it's reverting back to the circular shape. So again, clean it up, darken it up, try to avoid any corners, try to keep it nice and smooth and rounded. Put the halfway shadow in. It's a bit of a corner there, I want to get rid of that. Here's where the eraser is helpful. You can just nip that bit off there. So you see it's coming back to nearly the perfect circular shape, and again the shadow on the ground is going to be halfway to what it was. Alright, so now we've got 23, 21, 19, let's grab these 17 and 15. Alright, so now you can see we've got this crazy action going on. Hope you can see that. And it's slowing in because we've got more drawings near the top. It's slowing into the top and deforming back to the perfect circular shape because gravity is bringing it back to almost a static position in the air. For a split second, it reverts back. So now we're at 23 and we're going back down the other way. So we've already done 29, see? So we're going to go from 29 to 20, we're going to go the other way. We're going to take 23 to 29. Let me just separate these drawings. Paper tends to stick together. And so we've got 29, 23, we're going to do 27. So a new sheet of paper. And we're more or less going to do the same process again. So 27. I'm going to very lightly trace that path of action. I can see there's the center of the top one, there's the center of this one, and so our new center is going to be about halfway there. So again, superimpose. Actually, let me put 23 on the bottom. It's always good to keep the pure shape we're going to. So there's that, there's our arc there, and now I'm going to position this halfway, or over the top actually, and the paper is halfway. So we want to try to match up the arcs there as close as we can, but make sure the centers are over the centers. And then again, just gently work out halfway positions very lightly. Okay, and there's our, see it's a bit square and boxy, but I'll clean that up now. So I'm going to even it out a little bit, take away the corners where I can, or the square look, and try to keep it a nice smooth curved shape. And again, try to keep the shadow halfway. Working fast, working rough right now. That's probably a little bit too much there, so I'm just going to reduce that bit to down here, like that. And the shadow on the ground I'm going to put halfway. Just try to keep it underneath the ball, above it. Okay, so there we have from the top to the bottom. Hope you can see that. And finally we're going to do our 25 drawing between 23 and 27. Okay, so I'm going to put 29 to one side. This is going to be 25. Use my electric pencil sharpener, which is much faster when you're doing traditional animation. And again, I'm going to very lightly trace the arc. And here's our center position, so the new one, or the final one, is going to be there. Okay. And again, superimposing center over center, like that. Superimposing that center, that new center, over those, and try to align the arc as best as you can, but make sure the centers are more important. As long as you get the arc reasonably close to where it needs to be, all is good. And then I'm very lightly drawing halfway between the two, like that, which gives me this. Smooth it up, clean it up, make sure there's no sharp edges, corners, anything like that. Working fast, so I'm not as accurate as I would if I was doing a professional piece of animation. And again, I'm going to block in the lower shadow. And we have the shadow on the ground, more or less there. Okay, so let's just put the light box on. I don't know if you can see, our shapes are all bunched up together and then it does a long stretch and it hits the ground there. But it's better if I just flip it for you. You can see what's going on. See, it's coming down, hitting the ground hard there because we're got less drawings at the bottom than at the top of the arc. Okay, and that means we just have one more in between to do. So we've done our, it's going back to number 1 from 31. We've done our 35. So all we've got to do is the drawing between 31 and 35, which is going to be 33. So one last in between 33, and lightly in between the lines. Make sure you're getting it quite accurately, because this is where it reverts back to 1, so we want to keep it going in that direction, that more perfect curve position. And while it's here, I'll do the shadow on the ground. So the shadow is going to be, I'm just seeing where they begin and end, and it's just about there. Finally, what I've done is I put all our drawings in order. This is called flipping. This is the more advanced flipping. And I've put the drawings in order, but I put them reversed. So it's 3 all the way through to 35. And you can flip them like this, and you can more or less see the action. It's hard to show under the camera, but I'll try. and you can flip them and you get a sense of what the action is. And then remember, it's coming back to 1 at the end. So if I now put 1 at the top, keep them in the reverse order, but keep 1 at the top, you'll see where it's going to. Now, a little tip when you're flipping, it's difficult to flip unless you fan them out. So see what I'm doing here. I'm spreading them out like that, fanning them out, clamping it down with my top hand, and then I'm flipping them as best I can, and it comes back to that 1 position. Like that. Okay, now the real test, however, that's just a quick rough test, but the real test is to capture your drawings individually and render them out as a video. So I'm going to do that right now, and I'm going to show you what it looks like. And this is what it looks like. Now, by the way, I'm shooting each drawing for 2 frames each, so that's why I've done it on odd numbers. Now, if I find that it's moving too fast, later on I might put the even numbers in and shoot it again on 1 frame or 2 frames each. It's called 1s or 2s, okay? But I'm going to do it on 2s just to show you what this whole thing looks like when put together on video and screened in real time. Okay, just to show you how I got into that final version, on the right you'll see I scanned all the drawings on a scanner using a peg bar, and then I readjusted them in Photoshop to match the 1920 by 1080 screen ratio format that HD 1080 is. So now they're all ready. So what I'm going to do is show you how to put them into Rough Animator, how I work with them in there. So I'm going to go to layer 1 and I'll call this animation. And I'm going to click on there and I'm going to go to File, Import Image, and I'm going to find the Scans folder and I'm going to click on Demo 1. And there you go on the screen. Now if I click on the screen, Command minus, it'll reduce it down to the size I want it, but basically either of those I use it that size. So now I have drawing 1, and in Rough Animator it's on for 1 frame right now, and I want to hold the first drawing for say 30 frames, so I can drag it to 30 frames. Let's say 24, 1 second, okay, for speed. Now I'm going to go to Add Drawing After. So now you'll see it creates another drawing. Now I don't want this to be 30 frames. This is just going to be 2 frames. So I'm going to take it right down to 2 frames. You can click either way, get it down 2 frames. And now I'm going to go Import Image, go back to the frame 2. There's my frame 2, and I'm going to go After. And I'm going to go Image, Import Image, frame 3. I'm going to go all the way through to 9. Add Drawing After, Import Image. Got 4. That's drawing 7. And then I'm going to go Add Drawing After, Import Image. And then I'm going to go to that one, which is drawing 9. Now I want it to stop for a minute, so I'm going to do another one of those. I'm going to expand it out to 24 frames. 24 frames a second. Remember, in animation we work 24 frames a second. Unless you're working digitally in a digital world, then it's usually 30 frames a second. So now I'm going to add another drawing after, but I'm going to reduce it down to 2 frames. It's confusing at first, but once you get into it, trust me, you'll find it's fine. So now I'm going to import image. It's going to be that one. And now I'm just going to keep these going for 2 frames. Just keep going, adding a drawing after to open up a new frame, 2 frames, and then import images, and we're just going to work our way through. I think I did that one. Hang on, let me just check. You can scrub back. Oh yeah, so I'm going to undo. So in Rough Animate you can undo, use this image on the left here, click it, and that's going to undo. Now I'm going to import image, and that's that one. Just checking. No, it's 17, 19, yep. Add drawing after, import image. Add drawing after, import image, and so on till we get there. Okay, last one of the animation sequence, but remember it's going back to 1, so I need to add 1 more afterwards. Import image, and now I'm going to import 1 again for the last frame because it reverts back, and I'm going to make that 24 frames. This will also give you an idea of what this timing looks like. Each drawing, actually, yeah, there's 24. Okay, so once I've done that, I'm going to save as. Just going to call it demo 1, just so I've got it saved. And now what I can do is I can play it in the program. If I hit this play button here, you'll see it's loading up at the top. Give it a minute and then it will work itself out. Okay, and it will just keep looping. So you can see the roll across, the squash, jump, down. Now you can see how it all works. Now, the last thing to bear in mind is when you're playing back in a program, you think it's running at real speed, but it actually isn't. It's running at the program speed, depending on the speed of your computer, your graphics card, your memory, and everything. So it's best to render it out. Now, I have rendered it out, but I'll show you how I do it. Export to QuickTime. I'm going to call it demo 1, put it in the same folder, hit save, and you can see it's calculating and it comes up with the same image. If I click on it, put it in the viewable area, and if I go to view loop, so it loops, now you can see it in real time. And that's what it looks like in real time. So basically I wanted to give you an idea of how you approach hand-drawn animation as we used to and still do. Most of the world still does hand-drawn 2D animation in specific areas, in very commercial areas, not the USA. The USA led the world at one time and now it's not even in the game anymore. In terms of a career path, you can do all your personal stuff, which is why I'm showing you this, just to show you what our process was when we did it. But basically around the rest of the world, yes, there are 2D careers, 2D animation careers in both traditional and digital. Mainly it ends up digital, whether you're like, for instance, here, what I would now do with this, if I were going to do that kind of demo, but I'm not, I would now I would now create a new layer over the top of these drawings, and I would actually ink them with a fine line and then color them. Okay, but I'm not going to and export it to a color video. Put a background behind it. You can put a background on a layer behind the ink and color layer, and you can have a full color scene. All right, but I just wanted to give you a demo of the approach to the drawn side of traditional pencil and paper animation. And we still use technology, but it's much more accessible. And Rough Animator is such an excellent program for such a low price. And all the stuff I showed you drawing on paper, you can actually do in Rough Animator digitally if you've got a drawing tablet and pen and pencil, whatever it is. You could do all this in the program in the way it works in Rough Animator. But I prefer pencil on paper and then importing into a digital program, because I still believe the control of drawing, that superimposition you can't do in any other way in a digital environment. It's so much more controllable and more tactile. I like tactile. But once you've got your movement like this, you can import it into a digital program and do whatever you like. You can add faces to it, you can put textures to it, you can do all kinds of things to it, but getting the pure movement, in my opinion, is still better on pencil and paper. Anyway, I hope this shows you how it all works. I hope it encourages you to have a go. If you don't even want to go this far, you can always do animation on flipbooks. And for that, I recommend not sketchbooks to do flipbooks, but use very small white filing cards from a office equipment store like Staples or Office Depot or something like that. Little white blank cards, draw individually on each card, slightly different, and then put them all together and flip them like I showed you flipping paper earlier on, and you can create your own flipbook. But I think it's so accessible now, and with Rough Animator and technology like that, why not take the next leap? Okay, so over to you. Give it a go, try it. And as I say, learning the timing, learning everything is really it's a trial and error process. Just jump in, get started, try it out. If it goes wrong, the world's not going to end. Okay, you just do it again, or you fix what's gone wrong and work through it. But the process is field guide first, set your key positions, then work out your breakdown positions, and they're not, as you saw with the arc movement here, they're not always in a straight line. And then finally add your in-betweens and film it, test it. Then when you're happy with the movement, if you're not happy with the movement, fix it and redo it. If you're happy with the movement, then you can go to another layer in Rough Animator, ink and trace it with a black line or whatever color you want, and then color that, add a background behind it, and then render it out to a video, and you've got your first animated film. Okay, so have fun, and I hope this was useful, seeing how the traditional industry works.